12-gate treatise. Translated, with introductory essays, comments, and notes by Hsueh-li Cheng, 1982. Table of Contents. Introduction. Preface. 1. NaGaRJUNA and the spread of his teachings. 2. San-lun approaches to emptiness. 3. The nature and value of the text. Notes. NaGaRJUNA'S 12-gate treatise. Table of Contents, Seng-jui. Preface, Seng-jui. I. Causal Conditions. 2. With or without effect. 3. Conditions. 4. Characteristics. V. With or without characteristic. 6. Identity or difference. 7. Being or non-being. 8. Nature. 9. Cause and effect. X. The creator. 11. The three times. 12. Production. Introduction. MaDHYAMIKA. The hallmark of MaDHYAMIKA philosophy is emptiness, sunyata. This is not a view of reality. In fact, it is emphatically denied that sunyata is a view of reality. If anybody falls into such an error as to construe emptiness as reality, or as a view, even the right view, of reality, he is only grasping the snake at the wrong end. NaGaRJUNA in MK 24.18 has referred to at least 4 ways by which the same truth is conveyed.
Whatever is dependent origination, we call it emptiness. That is dependent conceptualization, that is, to be sure, the middle way. The two terms, pratisya samutpada and upadaya prajayapti, which I have translated here as dependent origination and dependent conceptualization, need to be explained. The interdependence of everything, and under everything we may include, following the MaDHYAMIKA, all items, ontological concepts, entities, theories, views, theses, and even relative truths, i.e., the essential jack of independence of the origin of everything proves or shows that everything is essentially devoid of its assumed essence, or its independent own nature, or its self-existence. Besides, our cognition of anything lacks independence in the same way. Our conception of something essentially depends upon something B, and so on for everything ad infinitum. Emptiness is thus shown in both ways, from the ontological point of view, and from the epistemic point of view. Sometimes, this is expressed in the form of an argument: the truth of everything is emptiness because of the dependent origination of everything. Compare the introductory comments of NaGaRJUNA in Vigrahavyavardhani. The above description, shorn of its awkward technicalities inherited through translation, from the style of the original Sanskrit formulation, can be restated for moderners as follows. The MaDHYAMIKA argues that what we might call the absolute conception of reality should be regarded as entirely empty. An absolute conception of reality, a reality which all representations represent, but is itself independent of them, is what is presupposed by our traditional natural science and also forced upon us by our very conception of knowledge. Knowledge, understood as distinct from error etc., is presumably knowledge of a reality that may exist independently. It is knowing what is there anyway, and what is there anyway is supposed to be unaffected, unmodified, by our knowing it in any particular way. And know we must always in some particular way or other.
Assuming that we wish to combat solipsism or some extreme form of idealism, we may put the point in another way. We seem to have a determinate picture of the world, what it is like, independent of any knowledge, i.e., any representation of it in thought, any conceptualizations, beliefs, experiences, and assumptions. But that picture is ever elusive to us, for we have only different, endless representations of it. No matter how deeply we may think, we may only have another representation of it in thought. It seems that each representation, barring gross absurdities and incoherence, could claim to be knowledge, and, what is worse, there is no vantage point from which we have an absolute representation of reality. Our conception of knowledge unfolds the implicit paradox: it projects the conception of an independent reality but also turns it into an ever-receding picture, a mirage. No representation can provide finally sufficient substance to that picture. An absolute conception of reality is therefore empty, a truth that dawns upon us as it did, so it is claimed, to the final meditative insight of the MaDHYAMIKAs. Emptiness or vacuity seems to be at times horrifying, and, to be sure, at times attractive and alluring. The modern man, particularly the Western man, finds this boldness to be rather intriguing, and it evokes two very different sorts of response or reaction. There are those who find in such forms of Buddhism an escape route from everything that they need to get away from: dogmas, superstitions, irrational beliefs, faith, and even rationality. For emptiness seems to change the very meaning of rationality. Lao Tzu begins Tao Te Ching with this verse:
"The way that we can talk about or describe is not the way." I am not sure whether the Taoist and the MaDHYAMIKA meant the same thing, but undoubtedly they used very similar language to say what they wanted to say. This contributed to the creation of the Western notion of Oriental mysticism as the takeoff point to the realm of irrationality. Those who boast of Western rationality, therefore, find such Buddhism positively repulsive and maddening. It is, they claim, the realm of illogic and therefore, of insanity. Both of these attitudes towards MaDHYAMIKA philosophy are wrong and misleading. Both of them grab, to repeat NaGaRJUNA'S own imagery, emptiness at its wrong end. I do not need to repeat NaGaRJUNA'S cynical warning: emptiness grabbed at the wrong end is like a snake grabbed at its tail, it is fatal. The philosophy of emptiness is not a regress into the primordial chaos of irrationality. It is true historically that MaDHYAMIKA supplied the broad philosophical basis for various forms of Buddhist practices ranging from pure meditation to exotic Buddhist tantra rituals for ecstasy. But this will be a subject for historians, not philosophers. What should interest the philosophers today is the fact that MaDHYAMIKA philosophical texts constitute undoubtedly an important component of our global heritage in philosophy. MaDHYAMIKA is a valuable expression of human rationality. This point needs to be stressed in order to counteract the widespread Western misconception to the effect that MaDHYAMIKA is of a piece with the so-called irrational Oriental mysticism. MaDHYAMIKA, for me, is philosophy, i.e., an integral part of what we call today philosophic activity. It is akin to the position of radical skepticism only if a radical skeptic can be said to have a position at all. One do not see how a radical skeptic can consistently hold to a position that can be formulated and defended. And the MaDHYAMIKA will say, NaGaRJUNA says in Vigrahavyavardhani,
I have no pratijna to defend. MaDHYAMIKA is skeptical of all philosophical doctrines, tenets, categories. Lt could be argued that MaDHYAMIKA is therefore not philosophy, it is anti-philosophical. I consider this argument to be fallacious. If philosophy is understood to mean broadly rational discourse on demonstrable answers to some meaningful questions, MaDHYAMIKA certainly falls into this category. Philosophy is one of the few disciplines which turns to itself. A comparison comes to my mind. Lt is a comparison with the discipline called natural theology. Anthony Kenny has recently written, too. If we take natural theology to be philosophical analysis of the concepts used in thinking and talking about God, then a disproof of God's existence, or a demonstration that the very notion of God was incoherent, would itself be a successful piece of natural theologizing. The MaDHYAMIKA attempt to show that all philosophical views of reality are basically incoherent would, I assert, be also a successful piece of philosophizing in the same manner. Vitanda, a few words about the nature of the philosophical arguments used by the MaDHYAMIKAs may be in order here. Their method of argument belonged undoubtedly to the tradition of philosophic debate that evolved out of the earlier tradition of sophistry and heuristic. A philosophic debate, the general strategy is to refute the rival positions.